obviously, we are here with Wendy and Neville to do our live Q&A, and we're doing this Q&A to answer some of the common questions that came up during the workshop that Wendy did, and that is still up at effortlessridercourse.com that you can join in there. And we were just going through, you probably saw all of the motions and it didn't make a lot of sense. We were just going through lengthening the back. So if you could maybe go through that again.
Sure.
And one of the pieces too, what I was going to say is, some folks were getting confused in thinking that it was bracing the back, like that they had to make their core tight and brace their back to find the position.
That's way too much work.
Not effortless.
Right, right. That's the thing is, what I was saying before is that we tend to do too much and try too hard. And really it's not that big an effort. In fact, it shouldn't feel like an effort. Like if you're bracing your abdominal muscles or trying to hold or trying to push your back, that is way too much work. So what I was saying before is that when we stand, we have an increase in the lordosis meaning forward curve in the lower back. And that's part of what we need for standing. And there's a ligament actually called the iliofemoral ligament. Ilio means pelvis, femoral means femur, and this ligament attaches from the pelvis to the femur. And when we're standing and that lower back gets a little more lordosis, a little more hollow, that ligament comes under tension and pulls the ball into the socket, the hip joint. Now that's really important because what that ligament prevents us from doing is that. Okay, so when we're standing, if we flop back, that would be a really bad thing. So the iliofemoral ligament, when we stand upright, comes under tension and pulls the hip into the socket. The problem when we're riding is that if we keep our back hollow like that or have that forward curve and that ligament stays under tension, it's tensing the hip, the joint that we need to be the most fluid in riding, because all contact begins and ends in the hips. So when we sit, if we let ourselves sit naturally, the lower back lengthens a tiny little bit, that ligament is no longer under tension, and so now I talk about the back being flat. So I'm just going to stick my thumb up his butt. This is too hollow in sitting, this is too round, this is just right. And you can see that there's still a curve in the spine. We're not eliminating the curve in the spine, we're just decreasing it slightly. So the easiest way to feel this is to take the back of your hand, way more comfortable than the front. Take the back of your hand and place it on your lower back, about at your belt line. And then just think about letting your back sink back into your hand till you feel that it gets flat. And when it's flat, you'll feel that there's two areas of muscle. They're not a single muscle, but you'll feel the muscles on either side of the spine fill out. When you hollow, these muscles tighten and they kind of get narrower and tighter. And when you lengthen, they get broad. And I think of them like two big fat sausages on either side of the spine. If I go too far, now my head's going to fall forward and my chest drops. So this is too round, this is too hollow, this is just right. And I always use the Goldilocks principle because I think that really helps us. When we try too hard and I got to get it right, then we don't give ourselves a chance to experiment and kind of feel, well, what's the difference? And so by playing with the Goldilocks idea, this is too round, this is too hollow, this is just right, you get a sense of this. So we're not engaging the abdominal muscles to do this at all. We're just thinking about it from the level of the spine. And it's just a simple little thing. Like when we try too hard, we're not going to feel it because we actually make it less easy to feel the way our nervous system works. So I would probably suggest that those of you that are struggling with this, I think you probably need to do a lot less and make it a lot easier and just make sure you can breathe. That'd be a good thing.
Yeah, I love Wendy and I were together twice now in Costa Rica.
Yeah, we had a great time.
And especially this last time, which was just a few weeks ago, there was kind of a constant theme of finding the middle. So when making these changes, sometimes it's easy to go, and this was true for what I was working on, too far to the other extreme.
Right.
And the right spot was really in the middle.
Yep. I've decided that's what I want them to put on my headstone when I die. Where's the middle? Because and that's where balance is. That's where, the line of gravity, it's in the middle. If we're leaning too far forward, our back is going to have to tighten to hold our head up. And if we're too far back, same thing, we're going to have to tighten muscles. And when we're in the middle, the line of gravity is acting down through us, so it takes the least amount of effort for us to maintain our balance. But when we're in any of those other positions, now our muscles are going to have to work really hard because we're designed to make sure that our head does not hit the ground. And so even if we don't feel it, the nervous system is going to go, well, you're leaning. I've got to tighten all these muscles to keep you from falling down. It's just automatic. It's not something you consider. In fact, most people don't even realize it because it's happening so automatically. It's what keeps us safe a lot of times.
Yeah. So Lisa said that the less is more lesson. How many times do I have to have this one? The rest of my life?
The rest of your life. It's my lesson too. So I'm right with you there. Less is more. I spent 16 years in Feldenkrais training learning that, and I'm better.
And Dorothy had a good question. So still staying on the idea of the back position, when riding alone, what's the best way to check my back position?
Just like I said, take the back of your hand, place it on your lower back, just above your belt line, and just feel for a broad feeling across here. So when I'm hollow, it feels kind of concave, yeah? It kind of dips in, and when I'm round, it rounds out, and when I'm flat, it's flat. So just take your hand and just kind of feel that. Yeah, I mean, it's, we're trying to make it easy here.
So as we're going through this, I had picked out some questions that were submitted in response to the workshop that we're going to answer. But if you have any questions watching live, put them in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can while we're on here. One of the other topics that came up a lot was the idea of sitting deep. Can you talk about sitting deep?
Yeah, again, it's about people trying too hard. They think they have to push themselves down into the saddle or, like make a big effort. And the problem with that is that you're tensing all these muscles here. And so, one of the muscles that you really don't want to tense is your buttocks. Now, it's not that it's completely flabby. We have to recognize that muscles need to work in coordination. And when we're moving in a coordinated way, the muscles are doing their job at the right time. My kind of example of that is that when you have an orchestra, everybody has to play at the right time and come in and go out of the piece of music at the right moment to make it sound beautiful, right? But if you just hear one instrument, like the horns are playing too loud all the time, it's disharmonious, right? It disrupts the whole piece. And that's so much of what happens in riding is that people focus on one place, like the core, and then they tighten that area, and what they don't realize is the adverse effect it has on the rest of the body. So I don't know if we did this, but if you all take one hand and shake it, and then tighten one finger, you'll notice that it restricted your hand, right? And you held your breath.
Yeah.
And so when we think about tightening one place in the body, it restricts the overall movement. So we have to think about coordinated movement, not effortful movement. And one of the places that's really important to not overwork is the buttocks muscles, the gluteals. Because when we make the buttocks tight, it becomes hard. And so if you think of a basketball, when you pump it full of air, it's going to bounce really hard, right? So the tighter you make your gluteal muscles, your buttocks muscles, the more you're going to bounce out of the saddle instead of sink in.
Yeah.
So we can't have a deep seat with a tight butt.
Yeah.
Okay? And all you have to do is turn your knees out to make your butt tight. So it's a pretty simple thing to do to make it tight, and then you bounce in the saddle instead of go with the horse. Okay? The other thing, and I was recently reading one of my favorite books, Understanding Equitation by Jean Saint-Fort-Paillard. You're smiling. And when I was reading it, what he said was so important in that what we want to do is marry our movement to the movement of the horse, not try to adhere to the horse, to cling to the horse. So the minute we try to cling to get our seat deep, that's when we're not going to have a deep seat.
Yeah.
Right? We have to think of marrying our movement to the horse's movement like a good dancer, and then we go with the horse and our seat will be deep. So it's really like when we try to cling with the back of the leg or tighten the buttocks and try to sit down and tighten our abs, we've engaged all this muscle that actually restricts the most important joint in the body, and that's the hip joint. And so in order to sit deep, we have to actually, in many cases, soften the buttocks, distribute the weight over the seat bones and down along the thigh, because now we have more surface area around the horse. So when I say around the horse, your legs come down around the rib cage. And so if I have my legs around the rib cage, you can see that I can go with the movement. Yeah. But if I'm pushing on his back all the time, I'm pushing him down, and then I'm trying harder, and I'm going to be less deep. So it's I think for me that deep seat comes from that finding that coordinated movement of my body with the horse's movement. Now, one of the things that's important there is that we understand what good movement is in the horse. And, you know, in the workshop or in the course, I talk a lot about what the good function is of the horse. He's got to be able to lift his back up into my seat. Anything pushing him down is going to make it way harder to sit deep because you've pushed the horse away.
Yeah.
Right? So he has to be able to come up into your seat, and your seat has to be able to come down around his body or around the saddle and his body. Hopefully that helps.
It does, and I love how you use even the simple things like that little hand exercise and the visual of the skeleton to illustrate different points. So when we did the course, we went through and did a lot of the unmounted exercises.
Yeah.
Are most of those things that you pulled from your Feldenkrais training, or where did you, are you that
Where do
creative?
I get all these
Yes.
crazy documents? I don't know. I get them from all over, right? So I'm always looking for something that can help illustrate what we want to do on the horse. Nothing is as good as the horse itself, but if we can kind of isolate certain ideas and understand certain ideas, like the chair, sending the knees forward, down, things like that, then we can, when we get back on our horse, we can see how that piece fits in the overall movement. So Feldenkrais is about having better function, being able to use my body in ways that either I didn't know or that I can improve on. And riding requires really good bodily function, be able to coordinate our body and use it in the possibilities that we need to help the horse do what he has to do. So in the Feldenkrais world, there's something called differentiation and then integration. So differentiation is something like, you know, if I just take one finger and I feel dip, mip, and pip for easy understanding, distal, medial, proximal, dip, mip, pip, okay, the 3 bones. And if I just take one finger and I just start to play with those joints, I'm differentiating each joint. So my fetlock, you know, my long pastern, short pastern, coffin bone joints, right? And then I can see how does that work in the whole. So I differentiate it, make that more movable, more aware, how it functions, how it moves, and then I integrate it back into the whole.
Yeah.
And so in many ways, all the unmounted exercises and the things that I present are ways to differentiate particular ideas. Like I'm thinking of that one with the rolling the arms out, but differentiating different ideas like the shoulders or the elbows, and then integrating that back into the whole of riding. Because otherwise it's too overwhelming. There's too much. You know, it's like, you know, we're trying to eat the whole pizza pie at once, and we need to be able to cut it into smaller pieces, right? And then see how it fits back in that pie.
Yeah. And that's it. So next I want to talk about function of the legs, because we have several questions on that. But before we get into those, it's one of the things that I kind of enjoy doing. So with the course, we'll tell you a little bit more about the course, but Wendy's book comes with the course. And I went through what we had filmed as the online course. I went through the book and kind of tied them together so that through the new workbook. So
yeah, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how all of you new members enjoy it, because that way you can watch the content piece where you kind of get the little lecture, the more in-depth how-to, but then the 5-minute fixes in the book help you to relate that to your riding, to get the practice in. And
when learning something, we all have our own particular learning style. Some people are visual, some people are auditory, they like to hear things. But the more senses that we hit, then the more, a better picture we get. In other words, watching the video and then going and reading the lesson in the book, now you're reading it and seeing the still pictures in the book, whereas in the video you're watching how that fits into the overall sort of whole. Yeah. And so it's a great way to kind of go back and forth. And that workbook, I went through it, I was really pleased with it. I didn't make any, I made one tiny little change. But it was great because it integrated the reading with the visual, and the more senses we can hit, the more powerful the material.
Yeah. Yeah. So with the legs, we had a few questions come in, and I'll just kind of, you know, I think you can probably answer these a little bit together.
Okay.
So the first question is about, she tends to ride on her toe and has the ankle then twists so that the toes are pointing out. Dorothy has a problem that when her horse starts speeding up in trot, her feet kind of float in the stirrups, and she's wondering if that's connected to the seat. And then the next question, she's struggling with balance and canter, and she said if she rides with long stirrups, she tends to go into chair seat, or she has to raise the ankles to give leg aids, and then also loses the stirrup. So I think maybe those all are kind of function of the leg questions.
Yeah, the third one, where when she lengthens the stirrup, she's more in a chair seat, that makes me wonder if there isn't something about where the stirrup bar is placed on the saddle, that it's not underneath her, and when she makes it longer, it's too far forward, and so it puts her leg too far forward, in which case you need to ride short enough that you can have your foot on the stirrup. Okay. The other questions to me sound like there's some gripping going on, especially on the canter. So if I was to put Neville into a canter motion, I'm gonna steady his feet here, make sure his knees are apart. Okay, here's canter motion in the seat. Okay, and that's actually left lead. So I can do right lead. Oop, too far over. There's right lead. Okay, and you can see how the seat has to be able to swing forward. But if I tighten my butt, that's going to turn my knees out, and then instead of being able to swing forward, I'm going to start to bounce, and I'm going to start to grip, and I'm going to lose my stirrups. So very often in the canter, the issue comes down to tightening and gripping. We get nervous, and we start to hold, and as we hold, it tightens the hip joints, and then we can't follow the motion of the horse. Okay, so when people start losing their stirrups in canter, I'm really looking to see, A, is the stirrup placed underneath them? If it's too far forward and they start to tighten, that foot could come up, especially if they start to grip. Or if a lot of people in their canter depart aids do kind of strange things. I've seen so many different ideas about a canter depart, not the least of which, I'm going to aim him a little more toward the camera. Okay, so what we have to realize is canter is 3 beat, but we want the horse to go straight. And I can't tell you how many people I see turn their body, turn their pelvis to ask their horse to canter straight ahead. But as soon as I turn, I'm actually telling my horse to go over here, and then if I lean at all, and that's another thing that so many people are taught to do in the canter is to lean, well, that's already going to shift my weight and take the weight off one foot. So to keep the weight equal on the 2 feet, I've got to stay in the middle, okay? And I want to think about where I want my horse to go, which is straight. So my pelvis has to be able to move straight. And the minute I start turning it or leaning for my canter depart or pitching forward, now I've put myself out of balance. Yes, my horse may canter, but the question is with what kind of balance? Yeah. And then if I get a little nervous about, oh, he's rushing, right, because I've knocked him off balance, I start to tighten, I'm going to lose my stirrups. Okay, so canter, we have a great module on canter in the online course because it's a question that comes up a lot. But we really have to break that down and go back and make sure all these other pieces are in place before we get to canter, because invariably the problem isn't the canter itself, it's something that's showing up further back, whether that's in the trot or in the transition to canter, that we really have to go back and sort out there, because the canter is just the more speed you add, the tighter you're going to get, and especially if you're a little out of balance, and it compounds problems. So that's where so many people say, well, I have this problem with canter, and really it's just compounding the problem, because now we're going at more speed and things happen faster, and we get more nervous, and so it's really important to go way back and make sure you've got everything you need for that canter. And this is where, and I've talked to you about it, and I was just in Fort Collins, and it's true for the horses too. We need to make sure you have all the letters that you need to spell the task you want to do, right? So if you want to halt, you need an H-A-L-T. But if you only have a P, Q, and S, you can't spell halt, right? And same thing for the horses. I can't tell you how many times this lovely little Mustang, very cute, really, really sweet, and the rider had a huge wreck and broke a bunch of bones, and so she'd recovered, and she was there with her horse. And the thing was, what was so obvious to me, the minute I walked up to the horses, it didn't have enough letters. Yeah. And it was standing only on a diagonal pair of legs. It would only wait one pair of legs and really rotate over. Well, I already know if the horse is doing that, they're set up for failure, because they don't have the balance that they need to do the job. And it's the same thing for riders. So often, I just start right from the beginning. I don't assume the rider knows anything, and I'm talking Grand Prix riders even, right? Beginner to Grand Prix. I want to make sure that I know and they know we have all the letters and we're talking the same language, right? So that as we progress, it's just one more little letter on top. And then we start building small words, halt, walk, and then halt and walk. And then, you know, and just building up into sentences, just like we would, you know, in English class. And that way, if there's a letter missing, I can make sure, oh, we need to fill this in. Right? So that you can do the tasks you want. Because this is what I unfortunately see in so much of teaching today in horseback riding, is that the instructors, they don't have all the letters. And they're asking their students to do things without fully understanding how to do that task. They might be able to do it, but to teach it is another thing.
Yeah, and when you say letters, like the specific movements
Right, like
in the different pieces
walk,
of the body.
halt, turn, leg yield,
Yeah.
you know.
So for halt, it would be, like what would be the letters kind of in terms of movement?
I would need to know that the person was in the middle, that if I pushed on their back, they were solid. If I pushed on their front, they're solid. That they understand the direction the seat needs to go. In other words, so many people want to do all kinds of movements with their seat, forward, back, up, down, eggs in a basket, right? But we want the horse to go forward, and we want his back up in weight-bearing posture so he can carry the rider. So I need to know that the rider knows the direction of the seat that we want to be the good dance partner. And not all horses know that movement. So we have to make sure that, you know, everybody understands. And then it's simple, you just slow your seat down into halt. But if you're going sideways, or you're pushing your feet forward, or you're pulling back on the reins, then you're not going to be able to progress to the next piece until we get back into the middle and solid in the middle and realize that from the middle, everything becomes so much easier and you need so much less. I mean, to a person, when I have people do a walk-halt transition in the middle, they're going, you know, how much did you do? Nothing, I just closed my fingers, or I just thought it, and the horse stopped, because he can hear that. But if I'm off balance and I'm leaning off to one side, or I'm swinging side to side, or I'm pushing my seat forward, now I'm disrupting that horse's back. So I'm making it harder for him to do the task. And then I don't even realize I pulled, because, you know, I've pushed my feet forward and I start to pull back. He's not stopping from your body, clearly. He's stopping because you pulled on his face enough. And so that's the thing, is if we're going to progress, we have to get into the middle and make that easy so that the next thing is easy. Right? So it's just kind of always checking to make sure, okay, I've got this piece, now I can go on and do this. Sometimes it's like, you know, do it once or twice, you got it, let's go. But I want to know that they have that, right? Because invariably, if I don't check that everything's in place, it's going to show up later, right? When we start adding speed, more complicated movements, you know, going out on the trail, down a slope, or somewhere, it's going to show up that we missed something.
So another question, and this one had popped up several times within the workshop too, and this came in from Eileen on Facebook, is so when she just lets her legs hang out of the stirrups, she feels that connection with their seat can give better aids. But then when the feet go back in, the old patterns come back. And that kind of ties into the very first video of patterns.
Right, and so most people from the very first lesson have been taught heels down, but they've been taught to brace against the stirrup. And so when you're riding bareback, right, you're riding along and your legs are hanging in space, so there's nothing to show you where to be. There's no limit. It's called an open kinetic chain. And the minute we put a limit underneath the foot, now the joints need to function in a specific way to not brace against it. But in so many cases, the person says, oh, I'm great bareback, I put my foot in the stirrup, and they don't realize they've already started to push. And so now they've braced against the stirrup and they start fighting the stirrup because it feels restrictive. And what they haven't learned is how to coordinate the joints so that there is no restriction. Right? And so that's what I talk about when I'm talking about function, is that it's not strength. You could be as strong as you like and you'll still brace the stirrup even more. Right? But it's about learning how to function in a way that you don't feel that restriction. And by the way, this is the big key to people who have knee pain. That most people with knee pain, if it's a Western saddle, most likely their stirrups need to be shimmed. And if it's an English saddle, it's because they're bracing. And you can see as soon as I push on that heel, you can see how that's pushing Neville's hip back. and then his head comes forward, and then I'm bracing here, and I've made a lever, and I'm going to pivot over that, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So that being able to find the function, regardless of the length of stirrup, regardless of, you know, the fitness level, regardless of age, none of those things are the factor. The factor is, do you understand how to work within a fixed distance so that you don't feel like you're fighting your stirrups? Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll take a few more questions here, and thank you for all the really good questions coming in. I know we're not going to be able to get through all of them in the Q&A, but that's why, even though the workshop is going to be drawing to a close, we have the course starting so that you can keep going deeper, and if we miss your question here.
Yeah, there's so much content in the online course that really addresses these questions.
Yeah, plus, you know, there's the personal elements too, like you can ask your question again in there.
Yeah, and send videos. Yeah, they can, when they take the course, they can send videos to me, and I can critique the videos.
Yeah. So, and actually that is it's a really cool thing with technology, because even though Wendy travels a ton, she can be hard to get in with, depending on where you live.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, I have people lately from the workshop, people are asking me if I'm going to come to the UK or that sort of thing, and I can't get everywhere. But with being able to send me a video and have me critique that certainly is the next best thing.
Yep. One of the questions that has come in a few different ways here, and it was also, a lot of people asked it during the workshop, is if they have a serious asymmetry due to an old injury or scoliosis. We had quite a few people that had a scoliosis. How can those riders still find functional riding if they feel like they're so limited in their body?
And they're not. I mean, that's you know, I'm going to tell my story about John, my hat maker. This man, John Morris, up in Bozeman, Montana, he's made my hats for me, and he has a scoliosis that is so severe that he could compete with the hunchback, right? And I went up to see him, and so with someone with a scoliosis, or you know, someone who's broken their back and has rods in their back, I'm not going to change those things. But if we use the rest of our body more effectively, they don't limit us nearly as much or at all. And so John had this, you know, he couldn't get, I think it was his right lead. And so I didn't even try to change his scoliosis. That's not possible. But I showed him how to function with it so that the horse understood what he wanted, and he got his lead. So this is where we so often think that, oh, I have, you know, a broken neck. I mean, I've had people come to my clinics with broken necks. That's why I say that. Or, you know, I've broken my pelvis, or I have a scoliosis. And so what's important is to find the function that lets you do the task. No one's perfect. There is no perfect body. And I had one of the world's best riders on my Feldenkrais table a few years ago. And I mean, when I watch this man ride, he rides so straight. And when he was laying on my table, he was not straight. So physically, he wasn't straight, but he rode it functionally straight. And what I mean by that is we're going back to gravity, right? So gravity is the law, right? This is what we don't want to do, hit our head. And so we have to find our middle of gravity in function. So if I have a bit of a scoliosis, that means that I don't have to let my weight shift over here just because my upper body is. I have to figure out where my middle is and not worry about the scoliosis. Where I'm sitting in the saddle in such a way that the horse hears my aids and I'm not impeding him. But if I say, well, there's nothing I can do about it, you know, that's self-limiting, right? So even here, there are ways, and you know, I can't give you specifics because in those cases, each one is specific. But when you start to go through the exercises that we have, you start to find that place, and there's different techniques that we use to help you. And of course, the horse gets to vote. So that's really, I know, that's my second rule. It's really important. The horses get to show us, and it's important that we start to look at it from a place of exploration rather than this is what somebody told me to do and this is what I've got to do. That's when we get in trouble, okay? But, you know, I mean, when people tell me, well, I've had blah, blah, and then I turn around and I look at these Paralympic riders with no legs or one arm, and they're riding Grand Prix, and I'm like, come on, really? It's just that because of their limitation, they've had to find other ways. Yeah. And we tend to think that there aren't, but there really are.
Yeah.
And that's where the Feldenkrais work is so, so helpful.
So I want to go through a few more questions, and in fact we had a really good one that came in from Lisa about when to start moving forward and doing more speed. But before we do that, since we're coming up on the hour,
Already?
I know, it goes fast. We did start 10 minutes late too.
Okay.
We'll tell you a little bit about the course and put that up so that you can take a look at that. And then if you have any questions while we're still on live, you can do that. So Julia's going to throw the link for it in the chat. And the basic details are all on that page. But we did put together a little bonus pack.
Oh, yeah.
For the first 50 new members. So the first is the DVD that it accompanies the book, and you have some of your most common fixes, your favorite ones.
Yeah, I have ones on here. Well, and finding your lower back position. There we go. That's right there on the DVD, so they get a visual on how to do that. And sitting the canter. There's a chapter on that. So yeah, so I picked the ones that I thought would be best illustrated by a video. From this book, and that's what's on here.
Yep. Awesome. And then we also have 2 tools that you use to do some of the fixes. Can you tell us how you use them?
So the EquiStrap it's a thin strap. You want to be able to hold it with your reins. And the idea is it's, I don't know if they can see the picture on the cover of the book. This is combining it with a stick. So many people don't know what to do with their hands or where their hands are because they're in space. And so by using something like an EquiStrap, we can make a limit, a constraint, a positive constraint that gives us feedback. So if I'm holding my strap and the next thing, one hand comes really high, the other hand got pulled down, I'm like, oh, wait a second. So I can feel the relationship between my 2 hands. So that's just one of the ways that the EquiStrap is really helpful.
Awesome.
Okay. And then we've got the Physio Stick. This is one of my fun tools. This was designed by a man named Rob Moses, who's a Kung Fu master, and he wanted to find a gentler way. And I was just working with everybody out in Colorado, and it's just so great to get your shoulders moving because, you know, so many people sit there and work on the computer or have a desk job, and then we try to sit up on our horse, right? And so what the Physio Stick does is it's curved, and it's the Fibonacci's curve, what we find in nature in seashells and things. And so one end is closing while the other end is opening. So basically what happens is all our joints move on curves. None of our joints are linear. And so many people go to the gym and they grab the bar and they're like, ugh, ugh, right? But it's linear and it doesn't honor our joints. And in riding, we need those spirals and the curves in the joints. So the Physio Stick brings that back in. It's like great for wrists and elbows and shoulders. And it's just a really fun tool that just, you know, I have videos on my YouTube channel, Murdoch Method YouTube channel, to show you how to use it. We're hoping to be adding more soon. So there's like 4 or 5 exercises there. And then just playing with it. So I had somebody in Holland last year, and I gave her the stick for a few minutes sitting on her horse, made sure her horse was okay with it coming over his head. And then the contact completely changed. And I have video of that somewhere. I got to dig that.
Actually, a way that I use it too is when I have riders, if they come in for a lesson and I can tell they're a little tense or they're nervous for their ride or lesson for whatever reason, is we just start with a few minutes of that because it gets into the body, it gets into the senses.
Yeah, and you can do a moving meditation, if you will, with a stick. You don't have to sit. You can walk, right? And you'll feel it, and you just find that. It's a great idea.
It's very relaxing.
Yeah, it is relaxing. And I hadn't, you know, because I see people for whole clinics, but, you know, certainly coming in for a lesson, especially if they've had to drive there, it's been a bad day. You don't want to take that to your horse.
Yeah, it's way better than a stress ball.
Oh, way. Yeah, and that way you can like move and find that flow because that's what we're looking for with our horses.
Yeah. So if you're taking a look at the course, we're including, when we ship the book, and there's the workbook that comes with the course, when we ship that, we're also shipping that little pack to the first new members.
So yeah, how many? The first 50?
50, yep.
So get in there early.
All right, so let me find this question again from Lisa. So with the different fixes that you've been talking about, or anytime making a change, she said, I'm feeling like I should just walk until I get more solid. When do I know I'm ready for more speed?
So, you know, let's say you're working on halt and walk halt a few times, then go ahead and trot. But the thing is, it doesn't mean trot 20 times around. It means trot for 5 strides and come back to walk and see what's happened. If you come back to walk and you suddenly know, oh, my shoulders are all tight, then you need to just wait till all the echoes, I talk about the echoes, all the echoes of that go away, and then trot again. So, you know, we need to kind of flirt with the line a little bit. If we stay below the line and say, I have to get it perfect before I can go on, you'll never get anywhere. And if you always push, push, push beyond what you're ready for, you'll never get anywhere. You'll wind up just as dysfunctional. Yeah. But, you know, if you feel like, well, let's try a trot for a few strides and see how that goes, and you come back to walk and you go, oh, I tightened my shoulders. Okay, so then let that go and trot again. And so it's like just doing reasonable little moves forward. And one of the things in the Feldenkrais world that we always talk about is reversibility, that you're able to stop, go forward, or go back. And so if you find that you've trotted and all of a sudden you're really struggling to slow down, then you need to spend a little time working on your slow down before you go back to the trot again. Yeah. Or start to slow down sooner in the trot. Don't let the horse build up so much head of steam. Or even trot across the short side of the arena so you have the wall to help you a little bit and make sure, okay, I can handle trotting across the arena and slow down. But if you get too much going, like the horse is trotting as he gets faster and faster, you're just going to panic. Yeah. So it's really just, you know, checking it out, you know, and doing measured tests, if you will. You know, if you can trot for 5 strides, go for 10. If 10 is okay, go for 15. But always check that you can come back, that you have the reversibility, and that way your fear levels stay low.
That's great. And that was actually one of the clips that we put in the course that we edited out from when you did a clinic here. It was talking about that concept of flirting with the line, even just for confidence boosting.
Right. Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great lecture, yeah.
So we did have a few questions about the course. If you are an alumni member, you participate again. You don't have to rejoin, and that's actually one of, I think, the cool ways that we do courses is once you join, you have lifetime access. So that means that everyone that joined last year can go through it again fresh, and if you join now, you can keep going through it again.
And I was at my clinic in Colorado, and one of my students, who's actually an instructor, she came up to me and she said that she absolutely loved the course and we should charge more. Oh. I know, I couldn't have said, yeah, she said it was way undervalued.
Well, one of the things that I've heard too, and that actually I've experienced for myself going through even your books and the course, is that once you go through it one time, you get a certain level of understanding, and then when you go back through it, you get another level. And sometimes it's harder to do that because you have to take the initiative to like pull a book off of your shelf or bring the DVD back out.
Or open up your laptop.
Yeah, but the thing is when we do the course is if you like go through the course now, then next year when we do it again, you get these emails from me saying, hey, we're doing the course again, you should join us.
Yeah, and then you have the impetus to go again because you've got this group of people going with you.
Yes, it makes it more fun.
Yeah, which is one of the great things because everybody kind of goes through like a class, like a group. And then the alumni that come through, they're like really, really supportive of the people that are new to the class.
Yeah.
And it's great. But yeah, you know, anytime you want, you can go back and look at the information. And they say that with new information, you can only absorb 15%, like maximum 15% of new information.
Yeah.
So that means you've got, you know, like 5 or 6 times that you could go back and still be picking up more and more and more in depth, just going over the same stuff.
Yeah. So when we did the course, we started with anatomy. Why did we start with anatomy?
Because it's really important. This is the framework. The horse's skeleton, your skeleton. You can only do what the joint, you know, like you can't bend your arm in the middle unless you break it. Okay? That means you have a shoulder joint and an elbow joint and a wrist. And when we understand how the joints function, especially the hip joint, super important, biggest joint in the body, most important joint in riding, okay? When we understand how the joints work, then we can move in the way our body is designed, right? We can't do what we're not designed to do, and the whole story is right here in terms of the joints that we have and the way the bones move and the way the shoulder works and what the shoulder sits on. I mean, when we understand this, then we stop struggling because we know how to use the very thing we need to use to ride well, our body.
Yeah, and then the second part is we did with the large human skeleton, basically the life-size human skeleton.
Elmer.
Elmer, that's right. And the horse,
he
was like a large pony-sized.
Oh, no, he was, the pony is small. He was the full-size Home Depot Halloween horse, which was great because it's a whole lot easier to use than a really fully articulated horse, which is expensive and not very movable. But
yeah, and he's pretty correct.
He's pretty correct. He has a rib cage like a bass mouth, but but we put Elmer, my 5'4" skeleton, on top of this skeleton horse, and then I moved them, and you could really see the connection between our skeleton and the horse's skeleton. Sometimes we get kind of lost in the covering, in the flesh, but you know, you're only as good as the structure, and just like this building, it's really a beautiful structure because it's well built, they're upright, they're straight, the joints, everything's supported. And that's the same as that if we want to ride well, we have to work with the structure that we have and honor that and understand how it works so that we can then honor our horse's body and do the same.
Yeah. So I'm just ready to type a reply here, but we'll answer this question too about, so the workshop that we've put out that Wendy's been doing is, we put out for two reasons. So the first is, I know you really want to just get this information out there for riders. You know, the basics of you can make changes when you have clear information, and also for the sake of the horses.
Right, because they're, you know, I call it benign ignorance. If we don't understand or know, we can't do it, and the horse is the one who suffers for it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, you don't intentionally go out to hurt your horse, but if you don't understand, you know, how you use your body, then we are hurting our horses in many ways.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, and the second reason for the workshop is it gives you a preview of what we're going to be teaching, what Wendy's going to be teaching in the course. Okay. So it,
and the course is super in depth. I mean, I don't even know how many hours of information there are, but it's, I mean, this course is really in depth. We go all the way through canter. I talk about how our body works, lots of different exercises to learn how your body functions, understand how your horse's body functions. We even have a section on saddle fit, which is super important because that's what's the interface between the two of us.
Yeah.
And then hours and hours of really good instruction. You can go back anytime to watch that again and again and really improve your riding and make a difference to your horse.
Yep. Yeah, so Kathleen, that's the workshops, the preview, it'll be coming down when enrollment closes next week. So because as Wendy mentioned earlier, we go through as a class, enrollment for the course is open for a week, and then that closes down, and that way we can focus on everybody that's in the course.
Right, so you have a limited time to sign up, and then we close the course, and then that group goes through as a class together, and the alumni can join in and go back through the course again with that group.
So let's take maybe like two more of the questions here, just because I saw this one popped up, and since you were just talking about saddle fit, it made me think of it. So this is from Lucy, and she said that she's had a hard time keeping her foot straight. It always points out, and when she tries to straighten it, it feels really uncomfortable in her ankles.
So it makes me wonder if she's riding in a Western saddle, because in the Western saddle, when the stirrup is just hanging, it's parallel to the horse's side, but when we're riding, we make it perpendicular to the horse's side. And on my YouTube channel, on Murdoch Method YouTube channel, I have a great little video on how to put a permanent twist into the stirrup so you don't have to do the broom handle technique, and you can change it so the stirrup will hang perpendicular, so you can just, when I say perpendicular, that's the direction we want our foot to be. So the stirrup's this way, and my foot's in the stirrup. But when we get these saddles, the stirrup is hanging parallel to the horse's side, and so then we have to twist it in position, and that's really hard on our ankles. So that's, as soon as you read that, I was like, oh, I wonder if she's in a Western saddle, because that little video shows you how to permanently twist the stirrup so it's perpendicular. That's going to take a lot of stress off your foot, and then of course shimming the stirrups is really important.
Yeah. So Chrissy just said that she signed up for the course, but don't tell her husband.
Oh,
So
we won't.
we won't
Look,
tell him.
Neville will
but,
not tell anyone. He's really good at keeping secrets.
But you can tell him that when you are aligned and you're feeling good and you're feeling effortless in your riding, you're going to be so much happier when you come home from the barn.
I think just the smiles when she gets home are going to be enough, instead of coming home and go, how was your day riding today? Oh, you're going to come home and you're going to be really cheery. You'll make him a nice dinner. I don't cook, so it's like...
And Carrie asked about how many Q&A sessions are there during the course. So we do one big Q&A for each session of the course, but Wendy's in there answering comments very frequently.
Yeah, Callie sends me the questions,
Yep.
and then I answer them and send them back. And then, of course, you can submit that video to me, and I can watch that and critique that.
Yep. So maybe we'll take this one last question, and then we'll hang on for just a few more minutes if you have anything about the course. But this is a good one, too. Tamara said, how do you balance during unexpected spooky jumps?
So the key here is to not be braced. In other words, if I'm got my foot braced against the stirrup and the horse spooks, because of the lever of my leg, I'm less likely to stay with my horse. But when we eliminate that leverage, when the joints are movable, then we're going to go with the horse. And believe me, I mean, I had a time when my horse Al, who was young, spooked 6 feet sideways because there was tall grass and somebody had cut a tree, and he saw it and he wasn't trying to get rid of me. He was just surprised, and he literally went 6 feet over, and I just went with him because my hips and my leg were soft enough that I could just go with the movement of the horse. But if I'm bracing and he does that, I'm gone. So really it's eliminating the stiffness in the joints. Doesn't mean sloppy, it doesn't mean lack of tone, but it means the tone in the muscles that keep the joints fluid. And that's really that critical piece. We need a combination of mobility and stability. And the question is, how do we distribute that? We want the mobility in the joints and the stability in the torso so that we can then go with our horse. Yeah, great question.
Yeah, and I'm excited for everyone new that's jumping in. So I won't go through all the names. I apologize if I miss anybody, but welcome Grace and Sherry and Lynette, Sabine, Sydney, Jillian.
Oh, and Sherry. Hi, Sherry.
Joanne and Jeannie and Valerie and Beth.
Awesome.
Yeah. Let me go back here. So another question we got about, can you purchase books or products without or before joining the course? So you can purchase things individually at Wendy's website.
Yep, murdochmethod.com.
Yep. And we do have a guarantee on the course. So if you join the course and for whatever reason you don't like it, there's no hard feelings.
Right.
Because
we want you to really be happy with it. That's the whole thing is, the whole idea is that you're really happy with the information and it helps your riding. So that's one of the things that Callie and I are so, we care about a lot, This is like important to us because you kind of become part of our family, and especially with that Facebook group that we have now. So, we kind of, yeah. We care about your success is what I'm trying to say. So does Neville, very much so.
Yeah. All right, let's see. And question on the video coaching, how much video to send in? There's 1 video per enrollment.
Yeah.
So that, that keeps it so that Wendy can make sure that everyone gets a response.
And one of the things that's really important when you send that video, make sure it's clear and you're not a little tiny dot way far away, okay? And that you send it with a specific question. So if you just send a video and say, here's my video, I don't know what it is that you want me to look at. So it's real important that you focus your questions, because when you can focus your questions, I can give you a very specific answer, and that helps you really identify what it is that you're struggling with. So just make sure you have a really clear question with your video when you submit it, or questions, but yeah, be specific.
Yeah. And hang on, I just saw a question and then I lost it here. Oh, so the Facebook group, it's the public Facebook group is CRK Training Riders Workshops. And then once you join the course, we also have a workshop for the course members, or a group for the course members, sorry, that you can go in.
Right, so that's a closed group to just people that have purchased the course.
Because then once you're in the course and you're in there, you can have some more in-depth discussions with the other members about what you're actually going through in the course.
That's where you're like in class together.
Yep. Okay, well, I think we are We're just a little bit over the hour, so we made up for our late start. And but we're going to get ready to sign off. Thank you so much for being on live. This has been a lot of fun. And we'd love to see you in the course so that you can keep working with Wendy. And if you've experienced some changes or some little insights in the workshop, you're going to love this full course. All right.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.